I'm Al, and today we're converting this Hope Hub from a quick release axle to a bolt through axle so we can fit this rear end on our Orange 5. Here we've got the tools that we're going to need to do the job that we've got at hand today. We've got an HG lock ring tool, chain whip for taking the cassette off before we begin, hammer, and a couple of 61903 bearing presses. You can bodge those with a socket, but that's the proper way to do it. Also a Hope hub support, which is great for holding the hub whilst we work on it. This can again be bodged with a bit of wood, but yeah, that's the proper tool. And this is a Pro 2 seal installation tool. You can use your fingers, but this makes things easier. Got a rag, cleaning duties, a bit of grease, nothing too sticky because it'll impede the action of the pawls. This stuff's good. And finally, a pair of pliers for in case the end caps are a bit stiff. We have to pull them off. First of all, nice and easy, remove the quick release skewer. We won't be needing that anymore. Out it comes. It's a good idea to pop the spring and the nut on the end so you don't lose it. Next off, we need to remove the cassette. So we've got our lock ring tool and chain whip. Okay. There you are. Next we need to remove these end caps. Should just be a case of pulling them off. Sometimes they're a bit tight. As long as you're careful, you can use some pliers. Next up, we're going to remove the freehub body. Should just be a case of giving it a little twist and a pull, like so. Inside there is a washer, a little spacer. We need to retain that because we'll need that when we reassemble the hub. Next off, we need to remove the old axle. We've got a Hope support here. You can use a corner of a workbench. It's a bit of a bodge. This will do the job better. And then we get to use our favourite tool to drift out the axle. You'll see that with the axle, the bearing has come out, still in place. We'll remove that in a sec. And also the seal from the non-drive side of the hub. Next up, we need to remove this bearing from the axle so we can use it with the new axle. You can rest it in a vise and just tap the axle out or against a workbench. I'm going to rest it here against this hub support and hit the axle to remove the bearing. There we go. It's worth noting that Hope have changed the design of their axles. This is the older version. It has quite a pronounced step here, which could cause a possible stress riser, could cause the axle to break. The newer designs, this is the Maxell axle, which we're gonna be fitting to the hub, has a less pronounced angle on it and it creates less of a stress riser, so it's a stronger axle. You need to clean all the old grease and dirt out from inside the hub. You need to make sure that these are totally clear so the hub will ratchet properly. Once it's nice and clean, this one wasn't very dirty in the first place, then you're going to need a bit of grease. Don't get carried away. because it'll only attract dirt, make the hub a bit sticky, and lessen that legendary hope click that you get. Whilst we've got the freehub body out of the hub, it's worth checking that the pulls and springs are functioning properly. Make sure that they spring back out into position and that none of the springs are broken. If we apply a small amount of grease to the pulls, just to help things run smoothly. Obviously we've already put some grease inside the shell of the hub, so don't go too crazy, you'll just be attracting dirt. And that's ready to go back in. Next up, we're fitting the new axle. Slide it in from this side through the bearing here, and using this bearing press, it's a 61903 press, that will locate on the outer bearing surface in there, so we're ready to drift it in, drift the axle into place. With everything in place, we need to give the axle a tap to seat it into the bearing on the drive side part of the hub. You'll see that this bearing has remained in place in the shell, and that the axle has now pressed into it. Now we need to fit the bearing to the non-drive side of the hub, which fits in there over the axle into the hub shell. Another drift, still the drift on the other side as well, which need to hit the bearing home. Now we need to refit this seal, make sure it's orientated the right way. This flat part goes against the bearing. It's clean and lightly greased. Fit the spacer, fit that over the axle. Give it a light tap with a hammer just to make sure it's all home. It's all good. Now we need to refit the freehub body. Don't forget the washer that we removed. It's very important. It goes on first, then the freehub body, which locates over the axle. If you turn it anti-clockwise as you push it into place, it just helps it to engage. We get a Pro 2 seal tool here, because this seal needs to be pushed into the shell of the hub, which makes it easier. It's properly engaged, and finally we need to fit our spacer on the end, which pushes into position. Finally we need to fit the cassette before the wheel goes back in the bike. Obviously line up the large spline with the large groove. Cassette on, just need to fit the lock ring. That gets tightened to 40 Newton meters, which is exactly what that is, by the way. There we go, job done.